Hi everyone, so I'm really excited to be joined today by MBDA. So welcome MBDA, thank you for being here with us. So who is MBDA? They work with all three of the armed forces and they design missiles and missile systems. So welcome everybody, and hopefully today you'll get a real insight about who MBDA is, the recruitment process, any hints and tips, and the journeys through their internship to their graduate opportunities. So just do some introductions. Taylor's somebody who I work with on, it seems like a daily basis, Taylor, at the moment, but probably when things are normal, on a weekly or monthly basis. Taylor's a HR advisor. We are going to go on in a little while to speak to Taylor about people's perceptions of MBDA, and then at the end of the webinar we're going to have a brief chat on the recruitment process and any hints and tips that Taylor wishes to give to the audience. So thanks for joining us, Taylor. Just to move on to Alice. So Alice went to the University of Nottingham. She studied an integrated masters in physics and astronomy. Thanks for making that really difficult for me to say, Alice. And she did an internship between the 3rd and 4th years of university. Jamie has a master's in aerospace engineering, studied at Bath University and did an internship at MBDA after his 2nd year. So welcome, Jamie. Becky's a little bit different, aren't you, Becky? So Becky studied maths and then went on to study mathematical sciences at the University of Liverpool. Becky actually did an internship with Teach First, and then decided to move away from the education sector and go on to the defence sector at MBDA. So we're going to speak to Becky in a little bit more detail about that later on in the webinar, because I think the transition from one sector to another will be quite different, and I think a lot of our audience out there will be thinking, well, I did an internship at one sector, should I go on to something different as a graduate? So I do think that insight that you can give, Becky, will be really valuable to our audience as well. So your positions at MBDA, so Becky and Jamie are both systems engineers, and Alice, a little bit different, is a systems test engineer. So everybody will get to know a little bit more about what they do in their jobs, favourite projects and everything else like that a little bit later on in the webinar. So normally I wouldn't introduce Sophie, my colleague, which to me she's there, but you'll have seen Sophie around the site on loads of these webinars that we've been running as well. But I do want to share with you some news. Sophie doesn't know that I'm going to do this, so she's either going to smile or cry, I don't know. But Sophie's actually been promoted this week to company director at GradCracker, which is a massive achievement. Sophie works really, really hard. So I just wanted to let all the audience know, and just want to say a massive congratulations, because it is a huge achievement. So well done, Sophie.
Oh, thank you. Live on air.
Live on air. I've already prepped MBDA because of this stuff, so yeah, but yeah, well done. Credit's due. So our history, GradCracker's history with MBDA has been a very long one. So they've advertised with us from right at the beginning, and they advertised their internships and graduate opportunities with us. I have actually had the pleasure to go to their head office in Stevenage. I mean, it's a brilliant site, really interesting. Went there a couple of years ago now, and I think Alice and Becky, that's where you're based now, isn't it? Yeah, I think that's right. I think Becky was nodding away. But they also have offices in Bolton, Bristol, and across the globe. And Jamie has actually worked from the Bristol office. Yeah. So we have recently, just to give you a bit of background with what we've been doing with MBD on the hub, so we've recently made a lot of amends and updates to the hub. So things like, there's information on there including things like the application process, which Taylor will speak about a little bit later on, what life is like at MBDA, key benefits, also things like the work-life balance, and how MBDA would support you as a student through things like your chartership, flexible working, funding towards further studies as well. So there's lots of information on the hub. We actually made the MBDA opportunities live this week as well. So they've got lots of internships, lots of graduate opportunities, which you can go and apply for. The customer relations team were nearly crying because there were, I think it's about 90 positions that we added to the site.
Yeah.
So thanks, Taylor. So yeah, but they're all there now. So really watch this webinar intently, and then afterwards go and apply to the opportunities, because there's definitely going to be something there for you. First, I'd like to start with you, Taylor. So we've given the audience a general overview of MBDA, you know, who you are, what you do and everything else. But if I could ask you to give more of a detailed overview of who you are. So for example, if we could start with how the business started right at the beginning.
Yeah, so we're kind of an amalgamation of lots of different companies. People always ask us what MBDA stands for. It kind of used to stand for the companies that all joined together, and then it became so big that we kind of just added a dot in between the D and the A to kind of show all those other companies that joined. We're kind of the only European company that designs and produces missiles and missile systems to kind of meet the needs of the armed forces. Yeah. We have 11,500 employees. And we recruit, as you said, a lot of early careers members, so over 200 each year, which creates a really good community feel at MBDA.
Yeah, and those graduates there, so split across all three of your sites, is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say the main site would be our Stevenage site, and then there's a few in Bristol and Bolton as well.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. And obviously everybody knows that MBDA is a missile, you know, makes missiles in a nice sense. But when a student applies, what are the common misconceptions of MBDA? Do you ever get anything that people just say the same thing all the time or ask the same questions that you kind of want to myth bust?
So before people do know MBDA, people mistake us for MBNA, the credit card company.
Did they?
People also don't realise who our shareholders are. So people know the companies of BAE, Leonardo and Airbus, but don't actually realise that they're our shareholders. Yeah. So we have a lot to do with all of those companies as well. I also think that candidates don't always realise the vast majority of roles that we have. We have roles across business and engineering sectors. And that there's lots of different disciplines within that, so it's really worthwhile going on the hub, looking at all the different roles that there are, and seeing if there is something for you. And actually you are able to apply for up to 3 roles, so make sure you make use of that opportunity. Yeah,
brilliant, thank you, Taylor. It was funny because when we were prepping for this webinar, I said to Taylor, oh, can I ask about what projects you're working on? You know, what's the 5-year plan of MBDA? And Taylor was like, nope, Carla, it's all top secret. I was like, oh. I was a little bit upset. So we can't tell the audience any secret information, unfortunately. But yeah, so thank you, Taylor, for that introduction. What we're going to do now is move on to Sophie, Company Director Sophie, and the rest of the grads, and speak about their individual journeys. I mean, some of you have done absolutely fantastic things there, so I'm really keen to learn, you know, find out a little bit more about what you've been up to and everything else. So, Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Carla. So we're just going to start by talking to everybody, because everyone has done some sort of internship, whether that be with MBDA or, in Becky's case, with Teach First. So I'm going to start with Becky, because as your internship journey was a little bit different to Alice and Jamie, I just kind of wanted to understand a little bit more about your Teach First experience, and then how that kind of impacted what your decision was after that to come to a company like MBDA.
Yeah, sure. So I was always told when I was younger that I was good with people, and I was told that a likely career choice for me coming from the Northwest was to be a teacher. There's not that many engineering opportunities up there, there's much more down south. So I kind of thought I'd work towards that. I went and did my maths degree because that's what I was good at. And then I did my internship with Teach First, and though it was a great opportunity and I got paid for the opportunity, it just wasn't for me. I thought there was more out there that I wanted to get to know. I'd been in education my whole life, but it meant that I'd then worked towards a career that I thought I was going to do forever, and realised, oh dear, you know, I've now not got any relevant experience. But in actual fact, what these companies are looking for is the fact that you've dedicated yourself to an internship. So it was helpful in getting a position at MBDA. Never discount any information that you think might not be, you know, relative. Showing you're a hard worker and you want to put yourself out there for opportunities is just as valid as working in an engineering-based company. Yeah, it was awesome, but I just thought engineering was going to be more interesting, and I took a punt. I'd never heard of MBDA before I applied, and suddenly got offered a job opportunity and thought, well, I guess I'm moving to Stevenage then. So yeah, it was a great opportunity, but much happier in the field I'm in now.
Great. And how would you say that the skills that you kind of picked up during that internship, so from the education sector, were transferable into sort of the defence industry? What sort of things did you learn from that you've transferred into your job now?
To be honest, with working in education, you work with a variety of age categories. You know, teachers can be varying in age, and you work with all different age categories with children. And though I don't work with children as a core part of my job, I do a lot of STEM outreach, and I wanted to keep that going because I do enjoy education. I do enjoy pushing people to reach the best of their limits, and seeing STEM outreach happen at MBDA is how I've sort of pulled in all the skill set that I'd learned from the education sector. Just being able to speak to people of varying levels and varying ages and varying abilities has really helped me understand a vast variety of people in the engineering firms that I've worked in.
That's great. And I think it's really what you're saying about, you know, transferable skills, and just because you do an internship in one area doesn't mean that that's, you know, your career set after that. You do an internship to learn whether that career path's right for you, don't you? And, you know, in some cases it is, in other cases you think, actually, I want to take a slightly different path. So I think that's really good guidance for our audience as well. Something else I wanted to kind of touch on is, what was the kind of process? Because obviously with Alice and Jamie, who did the internship and then came back to MBDA, how did your journey differ? You know, how did you find joining MBDA as a graduate when you hadn't taken that same journey?
Yeah, sure. So I think Alice and Jamie probably had the opportunity of an offer coming through the door without going through the same big process of applying to a graduate scheme. But if I'm not mistaken, they went through that just to get the internship. Yep. So really we had the same process, though I did it a year later for the graduate opportunity, whereas they took either an undergraduate or a summer placement opportunity. So them getting the job back here, they proved who they were in their internship. They were asked to come back, which is a great accolade. And so they didn't have to go through the process all over again. Though I'd been and done an internship elsewhere, it wasn't applicable to MBDA. They didn't know me from Adam. So therefore I went through the whole process. So we went through the same process just at different times, but maybe Alice and Jamie can corroborate that.
Okay, cool. And was there a lot of graduates that joined straight as fresh graduates without doing internships as well, or was the majority of people doing internships and then returning?
To be honest, it was quite a big intake in my intake. So Alice and I were both graduate software engineers, and there were 8 of us. So there's a bit of a mix of people who had come and worked here, and a few of us who were fresh out of the box. So the only difference really that I could have noticed was that they knew the people around them already, and they were able to just slot into conversation with everybody else. But because we were all graduates in the same boat, everybody looked out for each other, so we were introduced to the same people. And yes, they had some prior knowledge, because I'd never written code before. So, I mean, Alice will have written code in that summer placement window. So I was a little bit behind, naturally, but it was marginal. It was hardly any difference, really, if I'm honest. It was great to have the team around us, and the people who work at MBDA really are it's what makes the company. You know, the work's extremely interesting. I'm not going to have anything to say about that, but the people really, really do make the business great. Yeah. Unfortunately, I work on site every day of the week, so I work on the secret network every day, so I can't actually delve into the technicalities, but I can tell you what I do.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, we're going to come back to you in a bit then, Becky, and we're going to find out more about your life as a graduate. But I'm going to shoot over to Jamie now to start and find out a little bit more from you, Jamie, about your journey, because you did your internship and then returned as a graduate. So when you were looking for your internship, what made you choose MBDA?
I hadn't really heard of MBDA, but my friends had, so we dropped by the careers there, and I found it quite interesting. I liked that I could work in Bristol. It seemed like something different that I wouldn't have naturally contemplated. For me, what actually sold it was the interview day. So we had presentations from the department we'd be hired into, we saw the site, we had a rundown of how the early careers programme was structured, what opportunities there were, training, residential courses, the outreach benefits like Becky mentioned, and then just normal working benefits. For example, I think all of us here would agree that the flexi time scheme is a major perk that we have. So that allows for flexible working, setting your own hours. You're the opportunity for loads of time off as well. So that's just another, it was another selling point to me. I didn't actually think I did that well on the interview day, so I didn't really think too much about it. But when I've been selected, I kind of thought about it again and was quite happy to accept that I was convinced it was a good place to work, and that was it really.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on the Bristol thing, because I live in Bristol and it's an awesome place to live. So.
I'm jealous. I live in Stevenage.
I've been to Stevenage. It's lovely.
But I'm sure. But yeah, no, it's a really cool city, isn't it, Bristol? You know, lots of young professionals and stuff. So that's great. And it sounds like the interview process really did exactly what that day's meant to do. You know, a lot of people, I think of interviews as, you know, you're just being grilled by the company, but it really is your opportunity to find out about the employer as well and be
very much two-way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's great, and you know, that's exactly what we want to hear. So that's fantastic. So if you could give some hints and tips to a student who's applying to an internship or a graduate role, what sort of things would you say to them when they're going through the process with MBDA?
Okay, so things I tend to tell at careers fairs are look at all of the roles. We have, well, as you mentioned earlier, there are so many different roles. It's not one stream that you come in on, there are so many. So look at the different roles, see what's right for you. Like Taylor said, you can apply to up to 3, so you can kind of spread your chips in that way. Check what the deadlines and the entry requirements for those are. Don't leave it to the last minute, because what we often do, what we did last year, from what I understand, is if we have plenty of candidates, they might just shut off early. Yeah. And many companies do that. Companies that we speak to at careers, I mean, you'll know, that is what happens. So don't say, oh, I'll leave it until the week before, it'll be fine. Definitely do that. Make sure you are applying to the right position, that you are eligible. Different roles may have different requirements for your background. Make sure you do your research. Think about answers to things that are on the application form. The recruiters do read them, so use it as an opportunity to discuss, you know, your team working, your individual contributions, how you've overcome a challenge. You know, they're all good things to demonstrate on the form, but make sure it is personal. Yeah, so you're a unique candidate, so tell them, like, prove that you're a unique candidate. Do you have interesting hobbies, volunteering? Do you ever work? Have you done an internship as a teacher before? Have you done an internship in a related industry? It's all useful information. The form might be quite large, but fill it out. You know, the space is there for a reason. You know, there are lots of different sections. Fill them with your answers, because that application form is your first barrier to getting any further. So no matter how great you might be at an interview, you've got to get through that first step. So take your time. RTFQ is something that a teacher at school would say, and you always put it on my work all the time. So RTFQ was read the full question, think about it, think about all of it, and make sure you answer all of it. You know, this isn't like an interview where you're on the spot. You've got a lot of time to think about your answer, so there's not really an excuse for giving a poor answer. So make sure you think about it. And I don't recommend it, but I know that some people watching will probably have done this already, which is kind of fine. But if you are applying to lots of jobs that have similar questions on their application forms, and you're kind of copy and pasting like template answers, really make sure that you go back, read the full question, and make sure that what you put in is adjusted correctly to actually answer that question. Because if it's quite obvious that you're just copying and pasting something in, you're going to get binned off straight away. Yeah. And then really that's it. You know, check for typos. Maybe you use a spell checker. Perhaps if you're filling the form online, you might want to use a separate. You might use Word or Google Docs or something to just do spelling and grammar checks, because it's just something else that shows you've cared and you've taken the time to fill in the form. And maybe you get someone to help read through it as well. So that's, from applying top to bottom, that's what I would recommend.
Amazing. I mean, I couldn't have put it better myself, Jamie, to be honest. There's so much of that I wish I could, well, we will. We're just going to cut that bit out probably for the webinars from now on. Yeah, that's exactly what, you know, we say to students as well. So coming direct from you that's been through the process, you know, really recently, I think that's fantastic guidance. You know, the thing about closing early is something that we always tell the students as well. See your role, get your application in straight away, and all the other points. So that's fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Jamie. It's great to hear that coming direct from you.
Sophie, can I ask
and yeah, like,
question? So just Jamie, I know from your LinkedIn picture, but you DJ in your personal time?
No, that's that was at university. I did a lot of technical event work, so that particular picture was doing lighting for acts, so we had people come in. What was interesting was that was something that was brought up in my interview.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Yeah, so more than anything else, two things that were brought up in my interview were a small part-time job I had working at McDonald's. For some reason they were really interested in that. I don't know why, but they loved it. And then the extracurricular stuff that I did at uni, so definitely put that down, because you'll find that you might not have had a kind of full-time job before. So your examples of problem solving, Kevin, might not have come from a group project. It might have come from a sports team or like a society you did at university. Just as valid an answer. It shows that you're able to apply that way of thinking to anything. So there's definitely something to put down. Yeah,
thank you. Sorry, Cliff, I just wanted to get that across because I knew that Jamie done other things, so I just thought it would be worth having it on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that's something that we say to students all the time, isn't it, Carly? You know, if you've got that experience with part-time work or societies, make sure that you are mentioning that in applications. So yeah, brilliant. I'm going to go over to Alice now, and we're going to find out a little bit more about your journey, because again, you did a internship at MBDA. So let's start with you. You know, why did you choose MBDA when you were looking at your internships?
Yeah, so mine's a little bit different to the other two. So I grew up just down the road from the MBDA site in Stevenage, actually. So I was doing my A-levels at school just down the road, and my physics teacher
Alice, you've gone really quiet for me again.
Let me go and grab her and she can talk through my screen.
Oh, thanks, Becky.
Yeah. We work in the same place and we're next door to each other.
Well done, Becky.
We've got some sound issues with Alice today. We think it's because of the room that she's in, but Alice and Becky are actually next door to each other. So they're doing a quick switch. And we'll go from there. Alice, can we hear you?
All good?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, so I knew about MBDA growing up because I lived just down the road, and so I knew quite a few like friends' parents who worked at the company. When I was doing my A-levels, which was just down the road, my physics teacher actually organised us a little school trip, and we got to go around the labs at MBDA in Stevenage. And I remember walking around the labs, and I was just like, wow, this is cool. Like, I want to work here. Because I was already interested in STEM and maths and physics and things. So I was like, yeah, this is really cool. So, you know, I went away to university, and then I was doing an integrated master's. So I knew it would be a great idea for me to do an internship, be a great experience, try and get a foot in the door. So I looked on the MBDA website. I applied to as much as I possibly could in as many different departments as I was eligible. Because at that time I was like, I don't really know what kind of engineering I want to do. I was doing a physics course, which actually, when you go into the world of work, is quite generic.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know what kind of engineering I wanted to do, but I was like, well, if I get in there, then, you know, that's a pretty good place to start. So I applied for everything. I got a call back from software asking for an interview. So I went down that route, and in the interview, they were like, oh, why do you want to work in software specifically? I was completely honest with them, and I said, you know what? I don't know if I do, but I want to work for MBDA, and if you give me a chance, I will work hard, because I know that I want to work here and I want to be an engineer. So a few years down the line, I'm no longer in software. I found the part of engineering that I wanted to be in, but they still gave me that opportunity, and they knew that if they brought me into the company, I would find the right place for me within the company, which is something that I found really, really important, because I didn't want to go into something and then almost be stuck in something that I wasn't sure about. So I knew that with MBDA, I had the freedom to explore different avenues and decide and figure out where actually I wanted to be.
That's brilliant that you were given that opportunity, and I think that kind of just shows as well that, you know, the employer really wants to see the passion for the company. That is one of the most important things, not necessarily just your technical abilities, but, you know, if you can say, you know, you known from the age of 18 that you wanted to go and work for MBDA, that, you know, if you were given the opportunity, you'd work hard, and it's obviously, you know, you've proved that, so that's great. So when you started your internship, what kind of things did you do during that internship experience?
So the internship was in software, so it was mainly coding in C++. Going in, the only coding I'd ever done was in MATLAB at uni, so that's very different to C++, as I now realise. But I think the key thing for internships is they're not looking for you to be competent in the role that you're going into, because the point of an internship is for you to learn. Like, yes, you're there to do work, and you are doing real work. You're not just getting coffees and things. You are doing real engineering work. But it's important to realise that they are looking for the, in quotes, soft skills, you know, like the teamwork and the communication skills, because those are the things that are going to enable you to do the job. Because you have a degree or are doing a degree in the relevant subject, so they know you're clever and they know you're capable of the technical side of it. But what they want to know is, are you capable of learning the extra stuff, going the extra mile, doing the presentations, communicating with a customer, and things like that you don't necessarily learn from a degree. So although it was a lot of technical work, it was a lot of learning how to do the technical work. Like, I didn't actually output that much work at the end of it, but I learned so much going through, not only about how to do the technical job, how to code, how to write good software, but how the company works, how an engineering firm works, how a defence company works. And I think that's really important. It's not just the technical side of things.
Yeah, perfect. You obviously decided that you definitely wanted to stay at MBDA and return as a graduate.
Yeah.
So how did that process work? You know, when you finished your internship, did you fast track? Did you get offered straight away? How did that process work?
So I don't know how it works for different departments, but how they did it in software was basically they continually assess you throughout your 3 months there. And then at the end, they make a decision whether they would like to ask you back, or whether they think you need to go in, do some other work or get some more experience or do something else, and then potentially could reapply. So with me, they asked me back, which was great, because there's nothing better than going into your final year at university knowing that you already have a job. There was a lot of jealousy from other people, so it's a really nice feeling. I thoroughly recommend. So yeah, it was a case of basically proving myself throughout the 3 months to then hopefully get the offer at the end. So it meant that you didn't have to go through all the application process again, like Becky said. So I did it once the year before for the internship, which meant in my final year, I could then focus on doing the work and getting the degree, rather than doing all the application process and interviews, which take a lot of time.
Yeah. Okay, great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Jamie again, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with you, Alice, and go on to your life as a graduate now and your journey since you've returned. When it's time to get Becky back, we can switch you back over.
Yeah.
So you returned as a graduate, so now you're a systems test engineer at MBDA, and you've undertaken 4 placements so far as I understand. Can you tell me a little bit more about those particular placements?
Yes, so I came back as a graduate in software engineering. So the idea of the graduate scheme at MBDA is you tend to do 3 placements in your chosen department. So for me, it would have been 3 in software, and then 1 external, so a different part of the company to gain more knowledge about the business. When I got invited back for the grad scheme, I asked then if I would be able to do 2 externals, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in software or not, and they were quite happy to accommodate that. So I knew off the bat I was going to do 2 in software and then 2 externals. So my first placement, you don't get a choice in your first placement, because you don't know the company and you don't know what to choose. That makes sense. So they put you into your first placement, but they do try and suit it to the person. So for me, they knew that I didn't have a software engineering degree, so I think they put me in a team with the, it's called technical coordinator, the person who looks after the graduates. They put me in a team with them so that they could provide a little bit more help for me, which was really, really useful. So I really enjoyed my first placement. It was on a launcher system. So something that integrates between our missile and, you know, an aircraft, you know, ship, other kind of land launcher. So that was really cool. So it was mainly C++ coding, but it was great to see how you don't realize how big these like systems are until you actually work on them, and it's like, wow, and you see all the architecture that goes into it. So that was really cool.
Amazing.
So my next placement, I had to kind of a look around the department, talk to some of the other graduates, see what they liked about their placements, what they didn't like, because you've got a few iterations of graduates kind of in the year above you that you can ask to see what placements they liked.
Yeah.
So my next placement, I went into it's called actuators. So they're the little fins on the back of the missile that change the direction. So they need software in them to, you know, make sure they're pointing the right way. So my next placement was in actuator software, and that the reason I chose that was because there was going to be a lot more work in the labs, making sure the boards were programmed for other testing and things like that. So my first placement was very at a computer writing code, and the next placement was much more labs based. So I kind of wanted that contrast. My third placement, here in Stevenage, we actually have quite a few different companies all in a little row, and over the road we have Airbus. So having done a degree in physics with astronomy, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to go to Airbus for 6 months. So I was like, ask a question, see what happens. Worst they can do is say no. And they were like, well, if you can organise it and get someone to take you over there for 6 months, then yeah, sure, why not? We'll pay you to go and work on a different project for 6 months. And yeah, I managed to do that. I made a contact over there and got to work on software for the Mars rover for 6 months, which was pretty cool.
Wow, brilliant.
So yeah, I think it just goes to show that there's so much scope within the grant scheme here that it really is what you make of it. And the worst they're going to do is say no.
Yeah.
So you may as well ask the question. So that was really cool, really good to experience not only working on the Mars rover, but also how a different but quite similar company does things. So it was really good to get kind of, because often you think, you look at a different company, you're like, oh, maybe the grass is greener. But it's really nice to be able to get that kind of contrast and see what you value in the company that you work for. I think that's, you don't see that at this stage. You've only ever worked for one company, like how do you know that? So that was a really, really good experience to see. My final placement, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in software, and at this point I still wasn't sure, having done 18 months in software, I was like, I think it was a case of I kind of knew that it wasn't for me, but hadn't found where else I fit in yet. And Becky had actually already done a placement in Seeker systems. So the Seeker is like the front of the missile that kind of decides where it's going to go. So she'd already done a placement there and was like, I think you'd really enjoy it. I think it's right up your street. So I trusted her and I gave it a go, and really enjoyed it actually. So I really wanted to do things like going on trials and testing and basically seeing if the systems that we as a company had made actually work. So part of the Seeker systems testing is you take the Seeker and you go test it. Basically you gather all this data, you test and model it and see if it works, and that's something I was really interested in. So that was the plan for the placement that I started in March. Obviously a lot of that didn't happen because of COVID, but what I really liked about the department was that they were so accommodating in finding me other things that were still interesting to do that I could do from home. So I made like a tool for data analysis in MATLAB, which was, I'd used MATLAB a bit at uni, but not to that extent, so that was a really good experience. Then I also ended up doing some design work, which I wasn't expecting to do in a grad scheme, which was kind of terrifying, but like a really great learning experience. So yeah, and after the 6 months in the Seeker systems, I was like, you know what, I like the culture and I like the team and the work's interesting. And I think for me, as much as liking the work, the team and the culture that you're part of is so important. And when you're in the grad scheme, you get to try different teams, different departments and see what works for you. And I think for me, the culture of the team really clicked. in the senior system, so I decided to stay, and here I am. They let me stay, so that's good.
That is an absolutely incredible journey over, like, you know, was each 6 months? So,
6 months, yeah, so 2 years, yeah.
How much, that's
Still a lot.
an incredible amount of experience over those different placements, you know, go, like you said,
Yeah.
going to work for Airbus and then the 3 different departments at MBDA. It just sounds like
Yeah.
you've gathered so much knowledge there. And again, it's continually just guided you towards, you know, what area of engineering and what area of MBDA is going to be absolutely right for you. And it's so nice to hear that you've landed in a team that's, you know, really, you feel like you really, really fit into. And that
definitely
about MBDA as well, about, you know, that they will help you and kind of place you where they think you will be right.
Yeah,
just trying to
absolutely.
fall areas.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So moving on from that, and I think the culture stuff that we just talked about, Alice, actually leads on to this quite nicely, that work-life balance is really important to you, and really important at MBDA. And will be something that our listeners probably want to hear about, and it's something that's becoming more and more important to them. You know, they want to hear about that side of things from employers. So can you tell us a little bit more about the sort of things that you get involved in with MBDA that are outside of your day-to-day job, if you like?
Yeah, so at MBDA they do a lot of STEM outreach stuff. So you get the opportunity to help out with things like Robot Rumble. So you get to go and mentor a school and basically build a robot that you then compete in like a big kind of all singing, all dancing tournament, which is really cool. So that was really fun. Great experience, really enjoyed it. Also, there's like a million STEM out. They do so much STEM outreach. You constantly get emails like, "Can you help with this?" And you're like, "Yeah, it's fun. Of course I will." Another one is Glider Challenge. So we get teams from local schools to come into MBDA, and in the morning we give them kind of a series of seminars about materials, aerodynamics, like business, like loads of different areas. Then in the afternoon they have to design and make their own glider out of the materials that they can buy with their allotted budget from our little MBDA shop. Yeah, so that was really fun. Me and Becky both did that last year, and then this year, well, I was supposed to be leading that challenge, so I would have been in charge of the whole thing, which has been a really great experience. But again, COVID, so it's been postponed at the moment. We were hoping to do it in October, but I think that might now be pushed back till next year. We'll see. But also being a part of career days. It's just so much stuff. I can't even think. So many different things we need to.
Are you involved in like sports teams and things like that at MBDA as well?
Yeah, so MBDA have their own kind of little sports leagues. So I think there's like a football one, and I think there was a netball. Was there a netball one? Okay, there was a netball one. There's basketball, and there's a cricket one as well. So anyone who knows me knows that I love cricket. That's what I spend my entire life doing. So they have like a little inter-department cricket tournament each year, which is really fun. Not only do you get to go and play cricket, because for me that's a win, but you also get to meet people from other departments that you wouldn't normally. It's just really relaxed and fun, and just the fact the company invest money into things like that, I think shows you how much they value the work-life balance, how much they value the team aspect and employees actually enjoying what they do and where they work. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. Really good insight from your journey from start to finish, you know, where you are now. And it's really nice to hear that, and it's going to be so valuable for our audience to understand really, you know, what that journey's like. You know, if you do an internship, come back as a grad, you know, what sort of placements you could be doing in that sort of area. So thank you so much for that, Alice. I'm going to scoot over to Jamie now, and then obviously come back to Becky when you guys have managed to swap over. But we're going to start with you, Jamie, now, just to find out a little bit more about, you know, your journey, because you are a systems engineer at MBDA now. Yep. So can you tell me a little bit more about, you know, your placement so far, and how you feel about working for a defence company?
Okay, so I'll brush over my placements so far. So in 2016, I did my undergrad, and that was in emerging technologies, looking at AI and machine learning, which was excellent, great opportunities, going to conferences, going to training, going to learn all about that and help kickstart that move in the company. When I returned to the same kind of home department and was working on some of our newer technologies, which I can't really talk about. Yeah, well, that's the way it is. And then moving on to working on installation. So that was a complete change for me. That was actually the first time I'd ever worked on missiles, considering we're a missile company. It was always on other technologies before that. And now I'm moving in to support our mission planning team, who work quite closely again with our customers in using their products. I can't really mention more than that.
Here.
Yeah, I mean, like Alice just explained really well, and Becky mentioned earlier, so many of those outreach opportunities that I get involved in, you know, to help with career days, sitting on local panels in Bristol, talking to young students, deciding do they want to go into apprenticeships, do they want to go into full-time work to university, those kind of things. Help run our company induction process for new starters, so I might spend part of my day facilitating induction sessions or organising or liaising with our new starters, making sure they feel welcome. So we've just had like 170 grads come in a couple of weeks ago, so preparing for their induction process. So alongside kind of like, you know, day to day, wear so many other different hats as well. Did you ask about working for a defence company?
How do you feel about that? You know, a lot of people might be wondering whether it's right for them.
Yeah, so I wonder how Becky and Alice feel about this, but for me, I think you're amazed actually at how detached you can feel from it being a defence company. The example I tend to give to people is that you could be designing a software tool or a physical component that could be going in a car, it could be going in an aircraft, it could be going in a torch. You know, it's actually almost irrelevant most of the time. It just happens that a long way down the line it's going to end up in a missile. Or your software tool might not even have anything to do with defence. It could just be engineering management. So perhaps you're doing asset tracking, for example. So you know, it's completely separate. You know, of course, it's not exactly a secret that the context is defence, and sometimes it is important when you're thinking about the customer. But the point I'm trying to make is it's not in your face. Sometimes people like to hear that defence is actually defence. It's not always an attack, but you know, in this modern world, unfortunately, it's just a fact of life. You have to make your own judgment on that. Of course, everyone has their own morals. Everyone has their own viewpoints or political opinion on it. No one is in the business of convincing you to change your view. If you think it's right for you, then great. If you think it's an issue for you, then no company should try and convince you otherwise, in my opinion. If any company tries to change your view on what some people hold as quite a close moral standard, then to me that's a red flag. It is a very serious question that we get asked at careers fairs quite often, but actually you probably already know your own individual answer.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. That's a really well thought out answer, that, and something that, you know, will give our audience probably quite a lot of food for thought there. So that's great. So I know I'm kind of going to ask you a question. I don't know how much you're going to be able to tell me, but I know you have to be careful about kind of what you can tell us. But can you tell us, if you can, what was your favourite project that you've worked on, and some details about that, even if you can be vague?
Yeah.
Before you go on and answer that, Becky, would you mind just putting your yourself on mute? Because we're getting a lot of feedback from your computer. Is that okay? Thanks, my love. Sorry, Jamie. Just so we can hear clearly.
That's fine.
Thanks,
so what I'll probably do is kind of describe like a favourite moment. So for me, that was when I was working on ship installation. It was the opportunity to go on ship. For me, it was the first time on board, so it was quite special. It was quite exciting. It was a new experience, and it's not something you often get to do. You know, not everyone can say they've been able to basically have free reign over a warship, being like, I think there's one of 4 people on board at night, and just like wandering about. It was a very cool experience.
Yeah.
And what was important actually about that was it allowed me to make a connection between design and delivery. I think in defence it can be quite difficult because of how locked down everything is. It's very hard to be able to see something all the way through sometimes.
Yeah.
So to be able to go out into the field and see something that you've seen that down on paper and actually see it in real life can actually really help connect some dots. So for me, that really helped kind of tie everything up from that particular placement.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm conscious that I'm going to run over Carla's timeline in a minute, so I'm just going to scoot across to Becky because I've want to ask her a few questions. But that was really useful to hear, you know, about your experiences there, and you know that project just sounds so cool. I'm very jealous. So, Becky, coming back to you, I know we started with you. We're gonna finish with you. You have been nominated for some absolutely incredible awards during your time at MBDA, and worked on some really awesome sort of technical achievements as well. So I was just hoping you could give us a bit of an overview about those awards and those technical aspects as well. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. So essentially I started my placement in actuator software like Alice did, but I got the outstanding opportunity to go to France and reprogram these things live in lab facilities over there. So it meant I had to learn some French real quick. So from going out there, I mean, this was 3 weeks into me starting at work, and they were scrabbling for someone to get it together. And I said, well, chuck me in the deep end and I'll give it a good go. But you better be on call because I'm not going to know what to do otherwise if it goes badly wrong. And yeah, I won a reward and recognition from the company there. I didn't actually win it from software. I won it from the design authority in electronic engineering, which was really lovely. I got a nice £100 to spend on whatever I want. That was really nice. I took my partner up the Shard, which was lovely for a nice meal. And then, yeah, my second placement, I went and did Seekers. So where Alice wasn't sure for a long time what she wanted to do, I spent about a week in software and went, nope, this isn't my bag. I'm going to try and find something else. So I found my Seekers placement, and I went and started doing quite a heavy coding placement again. And I thought, this is not it either. So I said to my manager, look, you're doing a load of trials campaigns. I've just written a scan algorithm. I want to go and prove that at the trial. And he said, no. And I said, why? And he didn't answer for me. So I said, well, can you go and ask the trials manager? And I managed to wrangle a spot on the quarry trials. So we went to a quarry site, which I can't say where that is in the UK. And we put a load of different targets in the middle of a turntable. And we ran the seeker, and it picked up loads of different targets that it might be able to see when it's out in battle. And that was really, really cool. We won a business award for that, for team spirit. We've got 5 core values at MBDA, and team spirit's one of those. So there was supposed to be an awards night in March, but COVID cancelled that, so I'm a little bit gutted about that, if I'm honest. But yeah, as a team, we won that business award, which was lovely.
Yeah.
I'm also very STEM heavy, as I alluded to earlier, and did a lot of the STEM stuff with Alice. And we did something called Aircraft Reconnaissance Challenge, which was RAF Hendon. So we went to the RAF base. We got to show the kids around where all the jets were, where all of our missiles were on show. And we did essentially the glider challenge, but in an RAF base. And for that, we got a Runners Up People Award for our STEM outreach program, because we chose not to choose schools from Hertfordshire where possible. We chose underprivileged schools on the north of London, so that we could get more people understanding who MBDA are as a company. So we were runners up for a People Award on that, and got a nice pot of money to go out, but we still haven't been able to spend it because of COVID. Yeah, it's been a bit of a shame, but there you go. So I had a bit of an unusual third placement. I was actually planning to do a placement at our Bolton site as a bit of an external, but I got an opportunity to be a software project leader, which is quite a high up position in the business. And from doing that, I was leading 9 different test equipment programs, which is in a French Centre of Excellence again. So my French came into play, going back and forth to France, building a relationship with our French colleagues across the NatCos. And that was a great success, which then built me into this last proving position that I'm in now with Seekers. And I'm now a project leader on that. So I've come off the scheme on a really nice position. And it was really lovely accolade again to win Graduate of the Year at MBDA, which was fantastic. So my technical coordinator and my friend nominated me, and yeah, they awarded me the award, which was fantastic, really.
Oh,
Well
congratulations.
done.
Yeah, it was a nice little pat on the back for doing well in the graduate scheme, I guess. Yeah, there's a few external awards as well. So my boss has nominated me for an award in the Emerging Talent category in the Women in Defence Awards, and I've also been nominated for the Young Woman Engineer of the Year award for the IET. So that's awesome as well. I'm waiting to hear back on those, but not holding out any hope because I'm up against some stiff competition. So yeah, it just proves that they fund you. You know, they proper push you. They want you to develop, and they want you to represent the business as best as humanly possible. So that's what I do. I do most of my job in the office, but I do a hell of a lot of STEM outreach and going to careers fairs and whatnot to show everyone how great our business is.
That's brilliant. It's so nice, you know, thinking about when we first spoke to you right at the beginning of the webinar, you know, your passion and you're wanting to work with people of different ages, and how MBDA have allowed you to continue that throughout your professional career as well. And then the amazing achievements you've had over the last few years, and, you know, the technical aspects of your job as well. So that's been brilliant to hear, Becky. So thank you so much for that. I am now going to hand back to Carla, but again, thank you, Jamie, Alice, Becky. It's been great hearing for you. It's been absolutely fascinating for me to hear. I know Carla's been working with MBDA for a long time, but I haven't known as much. So it's been really, really interesting to hear from you guys about your experiences. So back to Carla.
Thank you very much. So thank you, everybody. So yeah, I want to finish the webinar with Taylor, if that's okay with you, Taylor. So Jamie, I know we said at the end that Taylor might be covering hints and tips, and I don't know if you've got any other ones that you want to add, because Jamie did an absolute sterling job on the hints and tips before. I think you've got a job at Gradcracker, Jamie, to be honest. So Taylor, if we could finish with you, and just for you to go through the recruitment process, if that's all right.
Yeah, so as Carla mentioned at the beginning, you can apply via our Gradcracker hub. Make sure you do go on there, read all of the information that's on there before applying. It will really help you to answer the questions on our application form. It might be worthwhile you viewing the videos that are on there as well, all about us. As Carla mentioned earlier as well, all of our roles literally open this week, so get on there and you'll see all of the roles, and you'll have more of a vast choice over what you apply to. Kind of from application, what happens is you apply, then you'll within a week be sent to do an online test. It's verbal, numerical and diagrammatic. You'll probably be sent that by most companies, and so you'll get really used to doing those. Make sure you utilise the practice questions that are on there before you start the test. You'll only need to do the test once, even if you apply to 3 roles. It's the same test for every role. If you pass the test, then your application will be sent through to the managers of the department that you've applied to. They'll review your application, decide whether they want to invite you to an assessment day. The assessment days run between November and March, so it is quite a big window. So if you don't hear from us, don't kind of think that you haven't been selected. It's just that we get a lot of applications and we do need to sift through all of them. So just try and be patient with us. Then what happens is, if you're invited to an assessment day, this year we've actually had to go to virtual assessment days, like I'm sure most companies have done because of social distancing. It also helps kind of with the graduates and applicants side as well, that they don't need to arrange travel, don't need to pay out for costs, don't need to miss any university lectures. We used to find that people couldn't come to assessment days because they had presentations at uni, so that helps with that. Our assessment days are actually strengths-based assessment days rather than competency-based assessment days. So if you've not heard of strengths-based assessments, please make sure that you look up what that means, because they are quite different. A lot of companies are moving to strengths-based as well, so it will be useful for when you're applying to other companies as well. One thing about our assessment days, we are told that the assessment day is fun and interesting, which is not what people expect. So as Carla mentioned earlier, it's not about grilling you. We want you to find out about us as well as you find us finding out about you. Tell us all about those extra things you've done on the assessment day. And our assessment day has actually just won a recognition award as well, for the design of it and the implementation of it. So it shows again that different things that you bring in to the company, any innovation or innovative ideas that you bring in, that you will be rewarded for those as well. Following the assessment day, we always give feedback over the phone. whether you're successful or unsuccessful, we always make sure it is a phone call. It's really important that you get that constructive feedback, so you know either if you've got the job, why you got it, and still some improvements potentially, or if you didn't get the role, what you did well and those extra things that you could have done to improve on. If you are successful, then we have an onboarding process. So we'll assign you with a buddy, which is someone that's already on scheme, so they can support you through that journey of starting. Then we also have a Facebook group. We'll join that with all of the other new starters, so you can start looking for people to house share with, or just to see who else is going to be on the scheme with you. And then we also have a pre-joining event in June, July time, so that you can put some names to faces, faces to names, and kind of hear more about the company. And that usually, if you're able to come to site, you can see more of the site, and look for house sharing on that day as well, because you'll be in the local area. I think that's everything.
Brilliant, thank you, Taylor. And then, have you got any hints and tips, or are you confident that Jamie's covered them all? It's taking a job.
Yeah, I think Jamie pretty much covered them all.
Yeah.
I think just the main things is just make sure you really do research the company and the role. Yeah. Make sure you really get across how much you want the role. Make yourself stand out from other people, showing those extracurricular things that you've done. You might not have succeeded at something, so say you're talking about a team project and it actually didn't go well. That's just as interesting. It doesn't always have to be a positive experience. It can be, it didn't go well, but this is what I learned from it. And we're interested in things like that as well. And just making sure you're really reading those questions and using that word count. Sometimes we get people that apply and will put one sentence to the question, and we just think, why didn't you use the full word count? You had so much opportunity. So I think that's the only other tips that I would add.
Thank you, Taylor. No, it's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed this webinar. I mean, I think the experiences that you've all had, and you know, the awards that you've won and everything else has been brilliant. So thank you all very much for taking the time out to speak to us today. Thanks to the audience as well for joining us. Hope you've all found it useful. We haven't managed to break any of the secrets through MBDA, but I will keep trying, and if I ever get there, I will go down to Stevenage again, and I will try and break in somewhere and take a few.
How are you going to get yourself arrested?
All part of it. It's all part of working at Grad Cracker. So I will try and get a secret out there. But yeah, so thanks very much. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Don't forget, like Taylor said, the opportunities are open. So please go and have a look. There's lots of internships, lots of graduate opportunities that you can apply for. And next week I will be joined by Jessica. She's back on the webinars with me for a couple of weeks, and we are going to meet STFC. So don't forget, you can re-watch this. I mean, what Taylor said about going on the hub, doing the research, making sure that you watch the videos and everything else. Don't forget that you can re-watch the webinar, and that will be on the hub as well. And Jamie's section will probably be on the Grad Cracker homepage next week. Hints and tips from Jamie at MBDA. So that will probably be there. But yeah, so hopefully enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week. See you soon, everyone.
Rita, thank you.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye bye. Bye everyone.